All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for our talk on From Feathers to Financial Management. This is a program that has gone through many, many iterations um, in the Panhandle of Florida. We're excited to present this to you. So this is a little bit more about the enterprise model in action and how we got to that point. So my presenters for today, it will be me, Dr. Julie Piggott Dillard. I am the County Extension Director and 4-H agent in Washington County. With me is Claire Davis. She is the Calhoun County 4-H and FCS agent. And then Prudence Caskey, who beats us all with her years of poultry experience. She is the Santa Rosa County 4-H agent. So we're going to talk today a little bit about how we got to this point with our program. So we have a program in the Northwest District, former Northwest District, that goes from Jefferson to Escambia County. So all of our 16 counties in that area, called the Panhandle Poultry Project. It was formerly known as Chick Chain. And about 2013 is when we started this program. We went to Alabama 4-H and participated in their program, loved it so much that we brought it to Florida, where it was really just kids getting chicks and raising them and then showing them at a poultry show. But we knew that there was way more educational content for kids to get through this project. So we've really made it a stellar representation of a complete and total 4-H project that spans from September through March, which is the culminating event. So we kind of backed ourselves into the enterprise model and realized a few years ago that this is really what the program was modeled after. We didn't do it intentionally. We just knew that we needed to get more bang for our buck out of this project. So what the enterprise model is, it is working toward a goal with an educational intent. So if you are familiar with large animal livestock projects, this is what those projects have been doing for years and years and years. The goal is not to maximize profit. It is not a replica of what happens in the real world when you are raising cattle or when you're raising swine or goats or sheep or chickens, as this case is. So the enterprise model has these components to it. The clear goal, which was to raise chickens at home for home egg consumption. And of course, the inputs are going to be money, time, materials, and knowledge. Planning and decision making. We're going to talk a little bit more about how the kids are involved throughout the process, but we're not teaching them to do depreciation or really heavy, intense stuff with record keeping, but we do want them to track their costs. We want them to develop and follow a schedule, manage their time, think about the risks that are involved with having an animal project at home, and then choose practices and strategies that will really make their project successful. So, of course, in extension, we're going to measure the outcomes, or in the enterprise model case, they call it outputs. So, we're going to measure knowledge gained and applied, skills gained and applied, to really generate some measurable results. And then at the end, we also have a product produced that kids can choose to consume at home or take to an entrepreneurial level, which we have had kids do. It also accounts for accountability. Those kids are responsible for their outcomes, keeping records, and learning that their decisions have consequences. And then, of course, the evaluation and reflection part of it, we used 4-H Common Measures 2.0, the Animal Science Survey, and the kids also have a record book through the project.
So, oh, go ahead. So through this slide, our research shows that financial education is most effective when youth have opportunities to actually practice those skills and not just learn about them. That's where this project can really be valuable for our youth. They're making those real decisions about expenses, resources, savings, and eventually maybe some income. They're learning to budget, tracking their costs, setting goals, and make adjustments when things don't go as planned, because that happens. And they can actually see how those decisions that they make affect the success of their project. So instead of that financial literacy piece being something they just hear about in a classroom, they're applying it to something they own and manage. They might have to figure out how much feed will cost, decide where their supplies are or what they need, and then determine how much they need to save to reach a goal. Those simple decisions that they have to make, they're simple, but they're building skills that do transfer to much bigger financial decisions later in life. And because the learning is hands-on and connected to something that they actually care about, those financial lessons can be much more meaningful and memorable for the youth.
And the youth, while they were participating in this program, it helps them to develop real life skills that they can utilize later in their workforce development. So they understand the responsibility of taking care of an animal. They understand that that animal is dependent upon them. They have to manage their time. They have to make sure that they are utilizing their time wisely, because we do not want them up till midnight filling that record book in. I'm sure there's some of them that did that, but it's best to work on your record book a little at a time, kind of like they tell us to do with our reports at the end of the year. I don't know if it's an FEA or an ROA, but whatever it is. And then problem solving and decision making. They get to decide, how am I going to feed this animal? What am I going to feed this animal? They also, part of the program is showmanship, where they're actually handling the birds. So they need to do that ahead of time so that when we're at the show, that's not the first time the bird's ever been touched. You can tell if they've been working with the animal. The record keeping is important, and keeping their records organized. How much have you spent on food? How many birds did you buy? How many birds do you still have? Are they laying eggs? Are you selling those eggs? What are you doing with it? And those decisions that they make create that accountability for them in the project, and it's reflected in their record books.
All right, so I mentioned earlier that the evaluation tool that we used was the 4-H Common Measures 2.0 Animal Science Survey. Personally, I am a huge fan of 4-H Common Measures. And I knew when I started as a 4-H agent back in 2007 that kids learn so much through our animal livestock projects. And it wasn't up until I think 2016 or 2019 that there actually was a nationally vetted evaluation instrument that measured what kids learn through animal science projects, which is mind-boggling to me because it's one of the tenets that 4-H was built on. So we're going to go through a couple of slides that show you what kids actually learn through animal science projects. So one of the things that we do that's a little bit different from some of our other program areas is that we're not necessarily concerned so much with the knowledge and the skills related to the content of the project. But with 4-H, we're really focusing on positive youth development outcomes. So as we alluded to a little bit earlier, responsibility and well-being are so integral to an animal science project. And you can see from these results, 80 up to 92% of kids really reported that they valued taking care of something other than themselves, that spending time with animals made them happy. And then another thing that we do through 4-H is introduce kids to new people, not just new things, but also new people. So they were meeting new people through their project.
So the slide shows here that youth aren't just gaining knowledge about animal science, they're actually applying it. The strongest percentage here, they were reporting that they learned safe animal handling and biosecurity practices, which is really important because those skills they're using every single time that they work with their animals, whether that be poultry here or cattle or hogs or goats or horses, whatever that may be. We also see that 74% did apply proper feeding, water, and housing requirements, and 73% were actually monitoring their animal's overall health. So youth are learning to look at the animal as a whole and understand what it takes to keep that animal healthy, well cared for, and, alive. That happens in some of our projects. They don't make it through. Unfortunately, natural disasters happen. So they're making sure that they are healthy as much as they possibly can be. And then 71% have learned how to present and show their animals for their best qualities. That's another great example of our applied learning here. They're not just caring for the animal, but learning how to prepare, present, and communicate about the work that they've put into their project. So these numbers are showing that our youth have opportunities to take knowledge and turn it into practical skills that they can actually use.
And these skills become something that we can have transferable throughout our lives for these youth. They were willing to work hard even when the task was difficult. 84% were understood that hard work is required in life and in these projects. Problem solving skills, 77%, and goal setting, also a huge part of this project. 72% learned how to do that. 68% reported that they learned with others. So part of our program is we have meetings, and we work with the youth to help them get ready for the show, how to prepare their birds for the show. And so they were working with others, learning how to do that, as well as the record books that they keep. 67% keeping accurate records. And I'm not sure if that was self or if that was graded, if that was self-reported or graded. But again, the record book is important because when someone has an animal for sale, you don't want to buy a 4-year-old chicken. That bird, she's had better days, so to speak. And so one of the things I always ask is, when was it hatched? And so keeping those records were important for the youth to be able to benefit from possibly selling their project animals or selling those hatching eggs.
Okay, so we think this project works, and we feel like our results have really shown that this project works for the kids that have been involved in it. We've been keeping the same records or the same evaluation tools for the past 3 years, so we're really looking to add that data together to see what those long-term outcomes for those kids might be too. But this supports the Beyond Ready framework, which is new to the National 4-H Council and Florida 4-H and all of the 4-H programs across the United States. We're really being intentional about supporting youth success now that translates to future successes. And part of that is making sure that kids are accountable for their own behaviors and recognizing that there are consequences to decisions that they make and actions that they take. And then, of course, reinforcing financial concepts, because we know that the research literature shows that kids who are exposed to financial concepts earlier in life, they continue to grow those skills and work toward becoming more financially secure as adults. And then, of course, the positive youth development piece that's always ingrained in everything that 4-H does. We've got a really strong youth adult partnership program. In some counties, this is agent-led. In some counties, it's volunteer-led. And then some counties, we have kids who are working on this project individually with their parent at home. But we know that it really speaks to their sparks, that intrinsic motivation of them wanting to learn more and wanting to do better. And then we've got some components worked into it now to really promote sustained content engagement. We have a public speaking component to the program now. So we're going just beyond exhibiting chickens and having a poultry show and doing showmanship, but those kids are doing public speaking. And we also are promoting the Avian Bowl, which is a Florida State 4-H program to test knowledge on all things avian. And then the poultry judging contest that takes place at the Florida State Fair. And we are really seeing through our county programs that we hook these kids early, because a chicken is an easy project to start with. It doesn't require a lot of space. It doesn't require a lot of money to start with, and it's a whole lot less intimidating of an animal project than a pig or a steer or a heifer or even a goat or a sheep might be. So we see these kids sticking around not only in the poultry project, but getting more active in our other 4-H programs, county, district, and state activities.
Okay, so I am big into kid fluence, and this is where the youth get to decide some stuff. So, like Julie had mentioned, they do public speaking, they do a demonstration, they get to pick that topic, they get to pick their breed of bird that they're going to show, they get to pick some of the things are optional. So we also have an optional photography competition, and they get some ownership of the program to decide how much of, that gives them ownership. It lets them say, hey, I'm going to island and I'm going to do the poultry thing, but I'm scaly leg mites, and tell everybody about my experience that I had with scaly leg mites. So it helps them to have some ownership when you're not everybody does this. And so it's a nice added bonus for those youth to be able to have some choice.
And so one thing that Prudence and Claire and I were brainstorming about actually when we were developing this presentation was thinking of ways that we can give kids even more input into the project. And so that's something that we really want to intentionally focus on over the next year and see, to get more buy-in because, I'm 50, Prudence is almost 50, Claire is mid-30s. I don't even know. How old are you, Claire? She's not even 30 yet, probably.
I'm only
She's a
21.
baby. Oh my God. Yes. So we've got a whole variety of ages between us. My kids are in college, so I'm not so in tune to what's going on, in high schools and in middle schools. Like I think I know what's cool, but I mean, I'm totally wrong, I'm sure. So we really want to intentionally build in some of that kid fluence so that we keep this project fresh and that we keep it open to what kids are really into now. So we're looking to expand on that next year and even, make the program better than it is. Um, we started off this program with just hard copies of all of the program materials. And then once Google Sites got really popular, we created a Google site for it that housed all of the materials, videos, instructional materials, everything that the kids could need to get through the project on their own if they didn't have a club in their county. When Google got taken away from us, we transferred it over to a actual IFAS program site. So this is the link. If you just Google IFAS programs Panhandle Poultry Project, you will be taken to our site where you can see it from top to bottom, and I'll put that link in the chat too for us later. But that website has everything a youth would need to start the project and finish it at the culminating end of the project. So we're really proud of our website and think it's a huge support for new 4-H agents who may not know anything about poultry or a volunteer who knows a little bit but doesn't really know where to get started to have a club in their own county. So that's what this project website does. It supports that from beginning to end. And we will take any questions you guys might have.
All right, we have 1 minute for questions.
Okay, Chris says, would you be open to exploring scaling this to a statewide program? Heck yeah, we love good stuff and like sharing stuff. So absolutely.
For sure.
We love it and we're so proud of it. So